Welcome to the deep dive. In our world, which is becoming more digital by the second, making sure everyone has access isn't just a nice idea anymore. It's quickly turning into something absolutely fundamental and powering that change. There's this whole industry just booming. So today, we want to cut through the noise, really get into the story behind the numbers for digital accessibility software. Yeah, our mission for this deep dive is to unpack these really significant growth projections. We're looking at the global digital accessibility software market, specifically the period from 2021 right through to 2033. We've got some honestly eye-opening market research here. We'll look at how it's spread out geographically and maybe most importantly, pinpoint the key things driving this huge expansion.
Exactly. And as we go through these fascinating figures, it's not just about what's happening. It's really about why it matters so much, both for, individuals trying to navigate the digital world and for businesses trying to build platforms that actually work for everyone.
Right.
It's definitely more than just money forecasts. It's about watching a pretty big societal shift happen.
Okay, let's dive into the big numbers then. So back in 2021, the global market for this software was sitting at just over $574 million. But here's where it gets really interesting. The projection. It's set to nearly triple. We're talking about soaring towards, wow, almost $1.6 billion by 2033. That works out to a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR of nearly 9%, almost 8.8% actually. Okay, let's unpack this. I mean, nearly tripling in just over a decade. What does that tell us globally?
Well, that kind of jump, nearly triple, it's not just growth, right? It's like a huge statement. It tells us that digital accessibility is shifting, and fast, from being this sort of niche concern to something absolutely core for businesses everywhere. You don't see that kind of steady, strong growth at 8.763% CAGR without something major happening. It points to a global wave of compliance, yes, but also a real cultural shift towards thinking about universal design from the start. Accessibility is becoming as vital as, say, cybersecurity or making sure your site works on mobile. It's just part of the deal now for being online.
Right, it's becoming table stakes. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit. Where is most of this happening? North America has been the big player historically. Right now, it holds almost half the global market share, roughly. And that lead it. It looks like it's only going to get stronger. The revenue there is expected to more than double by 2033. Looking closer at North America, the U.S. is, well, undeniably the main engine. It accounts for the biggest chunk of that revenue. But what I find really interesting is the momentum elsewhere in the region. Like Canada, yeah, Canada started smaller, sure, but its growth rate is actually ticking up faster than the U.S. That's quite an acceleration. And Mexico, too, is showing pretty significant expansion forecasts.
That's a great point about Canada's CAGR. Yeah, 9.1% compared to the U.S. 8.2%. So what makes North America such a leader and, such an early adopter? There are a few things, really. First, you've got pretty well-established legal frameworks like the ADA in the U.S., and they're being enforced more actively. That pushes companies beyond just basic compliance. Second, the tech ecosystem here is just very mature. Lots of resources, lots of innovation happening in software development. And third, I think consumer awareness is higher. People expect, even demand, inclusive digital experiences now. That puts pressure on companies. It's a powerful mix.
Okay, that makes sense. So if North America is the current heavyweight champ, then Asia Pacific is definitely the fast rising contender. It's got the highest growth rate globally. We're talking serious speed here. Revenue projected to more than triple between 2021 and 2033. That's a CAGR of 9.732%. And when you drill down into APAC, China's the leader there in terms of pure market size, starting around 42 million, heading towards 133 million. But the real headline for explosive growth, like you said, is India. It has the highest growth rate for any single country we're looking at. Globally.
Yeah, over 10.6%.
Exactly. It's set to see its market value pretty much quadruple from about 18 million to over 63 million. And it's not just India, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Singapore, Southeast Asia as a whole, all showing really strong growth paths. Here's where it gets really interesting. That rapid acceleration in Asia Pacific, especially India, what drives such explosive growth compared to, say, the more established markets?
That is phenomenal, isn't it? What's fascinating about APAC, and India in particular, is how several factors are hitting all at once. You've got incredibly rapid development of digital infrastructure. In many places, they're kind of leapfrogging older tech cycles. At the same time, smartphone use is just exploding. Millions and millions of new users coming online, many for the very first time.
Right, creating a huge new user base.
Exactly, a massive, fresh demand for platforms that actually work for them. And then you add emerging legal frameworks around digital accessibility. Often these new regulations are quite stringent. So you basically have this perfect storm
Rapid digitalization meeting a growing and increasingly legally required demand for inclusivity. It's a really dynamic scene.
Okay, let's swing over to Europe now. Here, the story seems to be more about solid, consistent growth. Maybe not quite as explosive as APAC, but definitely steady and significant. Its market value is projected to more than double by 2033, hitting around 319 million. The CAGR is around 8.3%. Looking inside Europe, the UK is a major player, going from about 20 million to 54 million. Germany is slightly larger, starting near 24 million and heading to 66 million. And Germany's growth rate, interestingly, is a bit higher than the European average, over 9%.
Yeah, that's worth noting.
France is also showing notable growth, projected to hit around 44 million. And then you have Italy, Spain, Russia, Sweden, all contributing consistently. So if we try to connect this back to the bigger picture, how does Europe's growth pattern, with, all its different legal setups and varying levels of digital maturity between countries, compare to North America and APAC?
It's an interesting contrast, isn't it? North America seems driven by that established legal push and mature tech scene. APAC by that rapid digital onboarding we talked about.
Hmm.
Europe's steady growth feels perhaps a bit more deliberate, maybe influenced by EU-wide directives trying to harmonize things. It feels like a slower but maybe surer integration of accessibility across diverse digital economies. That consistency, even with all the internal differences, it does show a clear, widespread commitment across the continent.
Right, a different flavor of growth. Okay, let's quickly touch on the other regions to complete the global view. They might have smaller market sizes right now, but the growth trends are still pretty telling. South America, for instance, projected to nearly triple its market size, from about 29 million to nearly 84 million by 2033. Brazil is the biggest piece there.
And Chile has the highest CAGR in that region, right? Over 9.3%.
Exactly, 9.365% for Chile. Good catch. Then there's the Middle East, also on a strong path, nearly tripling its value too, from 24 million towards 68 million. The UAE looks particularly strong, more than doubling its share. And finally, Africa. Starting smaller, around 15 million in 2021, but still growing significantly to about 42 million projected by 2033. South Africa is expected to be a key part of that. So while these regions might have smaller market sizes currently, their consistent growth trajectories are quite telling. What's driving this global push across such different economies?
I think what really connects all these regions, even though they're at very different stages digitally, is the increasing globalization of everything digital. As more and more of the world gets online and as awareness about accessibility just generally grows, you see this common theme. Digitalization is reaching new places. Combine that with developing international standards and just a better understanding everywhere of why inclusivity matters, and, well, that fuels the spread of accessibility software. It really is a global thing now.
Okay, so we've painted the picture with the numbers, looked at the regions. Let's zoom right in on the why. What are the core forces really pushing this long-term, pretty impressive growth?
Yeah, the research really points to three main drivers, and they're all kind of connected. First, and maybe fundamentally, there's this rising emphasis on inclusivity. And it's more than just a buzzword. It's a real shift in society, a growing understanding that digital spaces, they have to be usable by everyone, no matter their ability.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about like a major bank updating its mobile app so it works properly with screen readers for visually impaired users, or a government site redesigning forms so someone with motor difficulties can navigate them easily. This societal value, it directly creates demand for the software that makes that access possible.
Okay, so societal shift first. What's number two?
Number two is the legal mandates for digital accessibility. These are popping up more and more and getting tougher. In different countries and across industries, we're kind of past the point of suggestions. In many places, compliance isn't optional anymore. It's the law.
So real consequences.
Definitely. For example, a public website that isn't accessible could face lawsuits in many jurisdictions now. That pushes businesses to get proactive, adopt these solutions, both to avoid legal trouble and just to reach everyone.
Makes sense. And the third driver?
The third one is the integration into enterprise platforms. This is key. Accessibility isn't just an add-on or some expensive extra anymore. It's becoming a standard built-in feature in a lot of corporate and business software.
Ah, so it's becoming part of the core product.
Exactly. Major software companies are embedding accessibility tools right into their main offerings. It's becoming the default, not the exception. And this actually brings up an important question for you listening right now. How do these drivers affect your day-to-day online life? Have you personally noticed websites or apps becoming easier to use, more inclusive maybe?
Wow, that was quite the deep dive into this market. We've covered some serious ground. We saw that incredible growth heading towards nearly 1.6 billion globally by 2033. We looked at North America, still dominant, but also changing internally. Then that explosive growth in Asia Pacific, especially India, and the solid, steady expansion pretty much everywhere else. Europe, South America, the Middle East, Africa. Like you said, it's not just about the market figures, impressive as they are. It really feels like we're watching a fundamental shift happen.
Absolutely. The sheer strength of this market's growth, it really highlights that broader move towards a digital world that actually includes everyone.
Mm.
It shows we're increasingly recognizing that real progress means ensuring everybody gets the same. Fair access to information, to services, to opportunities online.
Mhm.
It's a market being pushed by business needs, sure, but also by this really powerful ethical drive to build a fairer digital future.
So, thinking about that explosive growth and those powerful drivers we just discussed, what innovations or maybe shifts in how we use digital stuff do you think might emerge? What could come next to meet this rising demand for accessible tech over the coming decade? What new kinds of access might we even see? Something to think about. Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So, today we're tackling a really interesting question for you. How is digital accessibility moving past just, ticking boxes for compliance? How's it becoming a real source of innovation?
Yeah, it's a fascinating shift.
We're going to dive deep into a recent market report from Cognitive Market Research, pull out the key insights, and really understand how things like legal changes, ethics, and tech are shaping this whole area. It's becoming a space for real growth and, well, inclusive innovation.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's unpack this. Here's where it gets really interesting. The growth drivers. What's pushing this market forward?
Well, first off, you absolutely have to talk about the regulation.
Right, the legal side, things like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA.
Exactly. And in Europe, there's EN 301-549, which
Mhm.
is super important for public sector stuff, plus Section 508 back in the U.S.
So these aren't just suggestions, they make accessibility a legal requirement.
Pretty much. It means organizations have to integrate tools across their websites, their apps, even internal systems. It's about avoiding lawsuits, sure, but also just basic user equity.
And beyond the legal pressure, there's another angle emerging, isn't there? The whole idea of inclusive branding.
Yes, that's a big one. Companies are starting to see that, actually, catering to users with disabilities. It boosts their brand value. It builds trust with the community.
It feels more genuine.
If we connect this to the bigger picture,
Mm-hmm.
accessibility is increasingly viewed as a critical pillar in environmental, social, and governance ESG strategy.
ESG, right.
So it's not just seen as a cost or a compliance task anymore. It's becoming a strategic investment that really contributes to a company's wider goals around sustainability and social impact.
Okay, that makes sense. Strategic investment. And then there's the sheer volume, right? The growth of digital everywhere.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
That's the third driver.
Yeah.
Just the huge growth in digital and mobile experiences means there's a rising demand for accessibility solutions that work, like, right now,
Yeah.
in real time.
So features like screen reader compatibility, being able to navigate just with a keyboard, text-to-speech.
All of that. And it means companies need tools that can automatically scan for problems and ideally help fix them quickly. Automated scanning and remediation tools are in high demand.
Okay, so there's clear momentum,
Mhm.
but it can't all be easy. So what does this all mean when things get tough for businesses? What are the bumps in the road?
Well, the first big hurdle, honestly, is often the upfront cost of implementation.
Right. What kind of costs are we talking?
You've got software licensing, you need thorough audits. Then there's fixing the actual content remediation and, crucially, training your staff.
That sounds like a lot, especially for smaller companies.
Exactly. For SMEs, small and mid-sized businesses, absorbing those initial costs can be, well, a real challenge, at least in the short term.
And even if they find the budget, there's another issue, right? Finding the people who actually know how to do this stuff.
Yeah, there's a definite shortage of in-house accessibility expertise.
Mm.
A lot of companies just don't have enough trained people.
Which must make keeping everything up to date pretty time-consuming and costly.
It does. And that leads into the third challenge, continuous compliance. It's complex.
Because websites and apps are always changing, new features, updates.
Precisely. You're constantly updating, constantly needing to test. And while those automated tools we mentioned are helpful, they don't catch everything.
Like what kinds of things do they miss?
Nuanced issues, Often.
Hmm.
Things like keyboard traps, where someone using just a keyboard gets stuck and can't navigate away. Or links that just say, click here. Non-descriptive link text that give no context to someone using a screen reader.
Ah, okay. So you still need people to manually check for those.
You really do. Manual audits are still necessary, and yeah, that adds to the overhead.
But the market isn't standing still. These challenges are actually sparking some really cool innovations. So, what exciting trends are reshaping digital accessibility for you? Where is the future heading?
Well, one of the biggest shifts we're seeing is definitely AI.
AI-driven automated remediation. How does it work?
So AI is getting better not just at flagging common problems, but actually fixing them. Things like generating decent alt text for images automatically, or correcting, say, improper semantic HTML markup.
Making sure the code actually describes what things are for assistive tech?
Exactly. It helps ensure that structure is right. This could massively reduce the manual workload and speed things up. It shifts accessibility from being reactive cleanup to something more proactive, more integrated.
That sounds promising. What else?
Kind of related is the rise of accessibility as a service, or S,
Like SaaS, but for accessibility.
pretty much. Think managed services bundles. You get the software, the audits, compliance reports, maybe even staff training, all wrapped up in a subscription. It offers businesses a more comprehensive, potentially scalable way to handle everything.
Okay, a package solution. And the third trend, you mentioned integration earlier.
Yes, this is huge. We're seeing accessibility being woven directly into the standard UX design and development workflows.
How so? Like earlier in the process.
Exactly. Tools designers use every day, like Figma and Sketch, now have plugins that can run accessibility checks in real time, right there during the design phase.
Wow. So finding issues before code is even written.
Right. And then further down the line, you're seeing accessibility checks integrated into CI/CD pipelines. That's continuous integration, continuous delivery.
The automated development processes?
Yeah, it means accessibility gets checked automatically as part of the build process. It really pushes that shift left idea, find and fix problems earlier in the cycle when it's much cheaper and easier.
Baking it in from the start.
This raises an important question. How does baking accessibility into the very beginning of the design process fundamentally change the game for everyone involved in creating these digital experiences? It changes the mindset.
So to sort of sum it all up, the digital accessibility software market looks like it's set for some serious, sustained growth. You've got the regulations pushing it, digital use expanding rapidly, and this growing focus on inclusivity. And while there are still challenges, cost, expertise, keeping up technology, and new service models are really stepping up to meet them.
It's a dynamic space for sure.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final thought.
Okay, think about this. Our digital world is getting more and more immersive, more personalized all the time, right? So how will the very definition of accessibility need to evolve? Will it move beyond just compliance to become something that's truly seamlessly integrated into every single user experience? Something that's just there, invisible maybe, but absolutely essential for everyone.